Well, greetings, imagination connoisseurs. Once again, it is I, your Duke of Dope Discourse, your master of fun and wonder, your viceroy of verisimilitude, and of course, your sommelier of sci-fi and cinema. I don't know where the Archduke of Banterbury graphic is, so I can't use that. But your pharaoh of physical media and your existential Mr. Rogers, Robert Meyer Burnett, and I am, of course, Robcasting at you imagination connoisseurs, you members of this, the Post-Geek Singularity community. And I just realized I bumped my camera over there. But you know what? There's all kinds of things happening in here, so it'll change. But anyway, welcome to this, Robservations, the show about something. Robservations episode number 586. It's hard to keep track. You know, one thing blurs into another. We just did our year-end wrap-up of our favorite physical media releases of 2020. You've heard me bang on about this. I've been talking about this for a year, but I feel like once I should hold it up again, up above my head. This is one of my favorite things that I own, to be honest. And I know that it might seem a bit strange to some of you that I love a movie from 1979 so much. But it's true, I do. And this, my friends, this is what makes life worth living. This Second Sight 4K Dawn of the Dead box. Let me just put this down here to get it out of my way. If you saw this, I have a desk full of all of my physical media. It's kind of fun, actually, but doesn't make working very conducive. Anyway, welcome to the show. We are seeing history in the making, folks. That is correct. History is being made. History is being made this weekend. What kind of history, you might ask? Well, some people would say maybe history that doesn't matter as much as, say, other historical events. But history nonetheless. As we all know, Wonder Woman 84, or WW84, it's like WWII, but WW84 opened this weekend. It opened in theaters around the world, and it started streaming on HBO Max. Everybody's talking about it. Everybody is, if wishes were horses, beggars would ride. And I think that it's very interesting what's happening. And I, as somebody, I've loved the entertainment business as much as I've loved the product of the entertainment business, meaning movies or television. It is very interesting to see what is happening because we are watching the future being shaped before our eyes. And how or what, or I don't even know what we call it now. I mean, it is definitely a sea change, but Warner Brothers obviously dropped a bomb on the industry by saying that not only was Wonder Woman 84 going to open day and date in theaters and on HBO Max, but their entire 2021 slate was going to do the same thing. Of course, this threw the industry into a tizzy for a number of reasons, all usually having to do with money, because people, directors and above-the-line talent, they have box office bumps built into their contracts. So remember, it ain't show friends, it's show business. And we are doing some business this weekend. And let me tell you, everyone is looking very closely at Wonder Woman 84's performance. Now, let's put aside what you may or may not have thought of the movie. Because in this case, it isn't show friends, it's show business. And it doesn't matter what the critics or even what the public thinks of the movie. All that matters is what is the public voting with their dollars. If there's money being changed, if money is changing hands here, well, then things are good. So let's just jump into this and find out what happened with Wonder Woman 84. And the first thing that happened that we're going to talk about, that we're going to look into, and this is fascinating, folks, is that Wonder Woman 1984 hits $16.7 million at the domestic box office in face of HBO Max release. Record for pandemic, but 84% lower than First Pick's opening. Now, first of all, let me dissuade any of you making comparisons to the opening of the original Wonder Woman with Wonder Woman 84, even though they're doing so in this headline. The key word is that we're in a pandemic, and it opened. It was a record box office opening domestically for our COVID-struck land. We'll have to wait and see what success Warner Media drums up in regards to Wonder Woman 84's impact. By the way, this is Anthony D'Alessandro on Deadline today at 10 o'clock this morning, 10 o'clock Pacific time. But from a box office perspective over Christmas, with 60% of the 5,800 theaters domestic market closed by COVID-19, the DC sequel posted a record result for the pandemic since theaters opened in late August, with $16.7 million at 2,151 locations. The first Wonder Woman opened to $103.2 million over the first weekend in June. Well, that's correct because all the theaters were open. There was no chance of that happening. In the same breath of reporting this weekend's figures for Wonder Woman 1984, which now stands at $85 million worldwide, Warner's announced a threequel with Patty Jenkins writing and attached to direct, with Gal Gadot returning. No word on whether that will also be a simultaneous HBO Max and a theatrical day and date release. Patty Jenkins was saying that the only way that she would work on Wonder Woman 3 would be if it was theatrical. Wonder Woman 1984's opening bests the results of Crude's A New Age's 9.7 million release over the 3-day Black Friday weekend, and Tenet's 9.3 million 3-day over Labor Day weekend. So Wonder Woman 84 is the biggest theatrical opening of the year since the pandemic and since theaters were closed. Note that Wonder Woman 1984 had close to 40% of all theaters open, which repped 56% of its box office. This compared to Crude's 2, which achieved its opening from 44% of all domestic theaters open, which repped 60% of the box office, versus Tenet, which had access to a marketplace where 55% of all theaters were open and repped 70% of the box office. In regards to the holiday weekend's other opening titles, Universal's Tom Hanks' Western News the World and Focus Features' Promising Young Woman, they respectively earned $2.4 and $680K in spots 2 and 5. Universal also owned the number 3 title, DreamWorks Animation's The Croods: A New Age, which brought in $1.7 million. So anyway, that's pretty interesting. Now, obviously, the domestic numbers based on the theaters that were open were not great, but the best of the year so far during the pandemic. However, what's really interesting is that based on the $85 million worldwide gross, which is a respectable number, 85 million worldwide is certainly not as a disaster, and it is very respectable so far. And based on that, as Anthony D'Alessandro also reported on in Deadline today, Wonder Woman 3 being fast-tracked following sequel's current 85 million worldwide to date. Patty Jenkins and Gal Gadot will be back. So Warner Brothers was happy enough that they said, before the weekend's even over, but bam, Wonder Woman 3 is greenlit. Well, not greenlit, but fast-tracked. There needs to be a script before you can have it greenlit. Wonder Woman 3 is being fast-tracked, Warner Brothers announced today. The news comes as the pick has amounted to 85 million worldwide after a 16.7 million domestic debut. The threequel will be written by Patty Jenkins, who is attached to direct, and starring Gal Gadot. The pick was released on HBO Max in the States and in theaters this past weekend. The sequel was in its second weekend abroad, grossing $19.4 million from 42 markets. Combined with U.S. Canada, Wonder Woman 1984 made $36.1 million this weekend. As fans around the world continue to embrace Diana Prince, driving the strong opening weekend performance of Wonder Woman 1984, we are excited to be able to continue her story with our real-life Wonder Woman, Gal and Patty, who will return to conclude the long-planned theatrical trilogy, said Toby Emmerich, chairman, Warner Brothers Picture Group. On HBO Max, Warner Media reports that the DC sequel was viewed by nearly half of the platform's retail subscribers viewing the film on the day of its arrival, along with millions of wholesale subscribers who have access to HBO Max via a cable, wireless, or other partner service. HBO Max also saw the total viewing hours on Friday more than triple in comparison to a typical day in the previous month. Some users on the HBO Max Help Twitter handle reported various glitches, either 4K streaming problems or Roku had bad connections. Overall, we hear from insiders that it wasn't a DEFCON 4 meltdown, meaning a complete outage of HBO Max. Wonder Woman 1984 broke records and exceeded our expectations across all of our key viewing subscriber metrics in its first 24 hours in the service, and in the interest and momentum we're seeing indicates this will likely continue well beyond the weekend, said Andy Forcell, Executive Vice President and General Manager, Warner Media Direct-to-Consumer, in a statement. During these very difficult times, it was nice to give families the option of enjoying this uplifting film at home where theater viewing wasn't an option. The simultaneous theatrical and HBO Max release of Wonder Woman 84 was expected to be a one-off, an anomaly given how 60% of the domestic marketplace is shuttered because of the pandemic, and those remaining exhibitors are starving for content. But Warner Media announced, to much ire from the industry, that they're putting their entire 2021 theatrical slate day and date in theaters and HBO Max as they anticipate a rough year ahead. This despite news that a vaccine is around the corner. That said, it's not clear if Wonder Woman 3 is going to be straight to theaters and the service at the same time. Before the holiday, Warner announced that 2023 movies are going straight to theatrical: Coyote vs. Acme, Mad Max prequel Furiosa, and The Color Purple musical. That's right, The Color Purple musical. I'm actually looking forward to seeing that. I'm a fan of The Color Purple. Now, here's the important thing. Wonder Woman 84 has been done for quite some time. They already knew that they were going to make a third Wonder Woman movie. They didn't necessarily need to. I mean, it's always a good bet to wait until the movie comes out. Number one box office grosser. I know it's a small gross, but in terms of during this pandemic, it outgrossed Tenet. It did well for the circumstances, and the numbers that HBO Max is putting up are huge numbers. And if it's going to drive, we'll know when they release their subscription numbers, how many more subscribers did they get because of Wonder Woman 84? Are people going to stick around? I can't wait to see The Little Things, the Denzel Washington movie that is going to drop. It's Rami Malek, Denzel Washington, and Jared Leto, 3 Academy Award winners in a serial killer drama. I mean, count me in, folks. That debuts next month. Same scenario. Obviously, I don't think a movie like that's going to do great at the domestic box office because, well, we're still in a pandemic, even though it's got a very, very, very respectable cast. I can't wait to the movie. It looks fantastic. But if this is the case, as theaters open, if the box office numbers are going to get even bigger, I mean, I think it's too early to call if people will actually, with HBO Max, will still go to the theater. Because to be honest, frankly, as someone who goes to the movies, I would have much preferred to see Wonder Woman 84, well, if not in IMAX, then at the Cinerama Dome in Hollywood, which is my preferred venue to see movies. But I would say that, I mean, again, all eyes are on Hollywood right now in terms of, or all eyes are on Warner Brothers in terms of, is this grand experiment going to work? And will it eventually, will the pendulum swing back to mostly a theatrical release? Hard to say yet. I mean, I don't want to draw any conclusions, but I do think that I am fairly optimistic about the prospects of movie theaters with this kind of opening. Clearly, people still want to go, and we'll see how it all plays out. How much money will Wonder Woman gross worldwide at the box office in the next month? We shall see. But in my mind, fascinating. Too early to draw any conclusions. But clearly, Warner Brothers had a lot of interest. HBO tripling their numbers. Obviously, this was a new thing. We'll see. In the coming months, we'll be able to tell more. But will they keep getting spikes when things like Godzilla vs. Kong, Dune? I mean, they've got a lot of stuff coming out, and we'll see. How will it work? But I think this is sort of a promising beginning. Maybe. I can't wait to read what the prognosticators are going to be saying about the future of this release strategy. Obviously, I think it's in all of our best interest to see movie theaters thrive. But this was not bad. So interesting. Very interesting. I want to keep watching with all eyes to see where this is going to take the industry now. So I'm optimistic. I will have to say that I did watch Wonder Woman 84 on HBO Max. That's how Elizabeth and I watched it. And the presentation was terrific. It looked great. And we had no streaming issues at all. I had issues with the movie. By the way, that's something I wanted to talk about. Tonight, of course, on Whining About Movies, we were going to do Tenet. But unfortunately, through no fault of our own, our review of Tenet got inverted. And it's now, it's in 2022. I don't know how that happened, but somehow we were inverted, it was inverted. So our review of Tenet is apparently, well, it somehow is in the future. It's traveled through time. It was gone. I guess it went, I don't know what's going on. I don't know. I think watching Tenet might necessarily, it could be hazardous to your health. It's I don't know. So in lieu of our Tenet review that we were going to do tonight, Elizabeth and I will be reviewing Wonder Woman 84 together as a couple. We'll be talking about Wonder Woman 84. So that should be fun. And again, I'll see what I can do about putting our Tenet review back on the schedule. It was unexpected. I didn't realize that had already done the review. Then it was displaced in time, and now it says we're going to do the review in 2 years from now. Very strange. Can't really explain all of that. Again, if I could hear more of the dialogue in Tenet, I might know how to fix this issue. But until we can, I don't know what to say. So tonight we're going to review Wonder Woman 84. So tune in for Whining About Movies, episode 107, Wonder Woman 84. Now, let's see what you guys have to say. Let me just jump back in to the letters that I wasn't getting to yesterday. Aaron Johnson writes in. Aaron Johnson says, Dear Rob, greetings and Merry Christmas. I thought I would write in on Christmas Eve with my thoughts on Die Hard. Die Hard as a Christmas movie is quite engaging, and as an action movie, it is also entertaining. The things that make the film great, ranging from John meeting Holly to John talking to Argyle and later Al Powell. And of course, you have the Thornburg and Ellis and Dwayne T. Robinson, which are basically the three Walter Pecks of the film. Thornburg because he believes that he wants to get a good story. Ellis, played by Hart Bochner, because he tends to have his own agenda trying to talk to Holly and also annoy Hans and his German terrorists. And the third Walter Peck of the film is Dwayne T. Robinson, Paul Gleason, who clearly doesn't believe John on the radio and doesn't think he's a New York cop. Thornburg, Robinson, and Ellis all should equally be ashamed of annoying McClane. If this film had better humor on the level of Ivan Reitman's Ghostbusters, then Bruce Willis's John McClane probably would have running joke comebacks on the level of Bill Murray's Peter Venkman, ones that could get the viewer laughing more rather than have cuss humor. Clearly, there is no discipline from the latter half of the story when Robinson tries to annoy McClane. He tries to allow the two Agent Johnsons, and it becomes even further Walter Peck BS against McClane, claiming that he's not doing the right thing to do his job to stop Gruber and his German terrorist gang, and I am clearly not a fan of Dwayne Robinson acting like that. That's like the NYPD Blue Cop in Die Hard 2, played by Dennis Franz, constantly yelling at John. The film does have some quite respectable moments. The fun moment of the film I enjoy outside of many fights between John and the Germans is the vault scene. It is the vault scene that has Michael Kamen's take on Beethoven's Ode to Joy. My thought was, this is cool. They used the Symphony No. 9. The Ode to Joy Symphony was also used at the end credits of the film after Let It Snow, Let It Snow, Let It Snow. Seeing the vault scene always associates with Christmas because you tend to see lights flickering when the vault is opening, and there's so much going on between Hans' henchmen and the scenes involving the two Agent Johnsons that the viewer would be able to tell between scenes while the Ode to Joy is playing who is talking. My question for you, Rob, do you think Die Hard would have improved had John McClane been given better humor and was better disciplined? Thanks for listening. Sincerely, Aaron Johnson. Bruh. Are you asking me if I think Die Hard could be improved? Hell no. You can't improve perfection. I mean, Die Hard is, if anything, symbolizes the 80s action film. I mean, sure, there's going to be some yo-yo that'll throw out Commando to me, or somebody who'll give me some Chuck Norris film like Good Guys Wear Black or something like that, but that's fine. I understand. I know where you're coming from. But let me tell you, I mean, Die Hard is the Citizen Kane of German Euro trash terrorists who take over a building and blow shit up. It is a Citizen Kane of that genre. It doesn't get any better. And you know how you can tell? The script for this movie is incredible. Kamen's music is incredible. The Euro trash terrorists are incredible, led by Alan Rickman. But come on, Alexander Goodenough? Come on, man. The guy who played Necros in Living Daylights the year before? They knew what was up. The beautiful Jan de Bont widescreen photography, and of course, John McTiernan's powerhouse direction. And like you pointed out, the amazing secondary cast of this film. This movie is it is top of the line. This is Tiffany. This is your gold box with a white ribbon around it. It's that good. Not gold box, a powder blue box with a white ribbon around it. Your Tiffany box of action movies. It doesn't get any better than this. And it really doesn't. And I think that this movie, 65 millimeter visual effects by Richard Edlund, incredible. There's no helicopter on the roof of that building. You don't see it. That was visual effects, man. No. This movie could not have been improved. This is it. This is the gold standard. It always has been. It's been the gold standard for 32 years. And you know what? You might argue, like when he jumps off the building and is able to kick his way through the window, I say that as far as a movie like this goes, this movie, peak verisimilitude. Yes, it sometimes dances on the razor's edge, but for the most part, I give this movie my highest recommendation, and I would say that, yep, you can't get much better than this. So there you go. Donnie Pearson writes in. Donnie Pearson says, hello, Rob and the fellow PGSers. I thought I would send my holiday greetings to you and everyone across the Post-Geek Singularity, and thank you for another great year of fun on your live streams. Well, thank you. Not just Robservations, despite various jeopardies. I'm already set for 2021 and everything happening from the debut of Power Rangers Dino Fury to the debut of new Star Trek shows, including Prodigy and Strange New Worlds. I can imagine Nickelodeon airing Prodigy every Saturday morning after Dino Fury. Here's the hope that 2021 will rule rather than drool. I don't know. I mean, more Star Trek shows might just leave me something. You know, all the liquid in my mouth will be pouring down my, have to save me. I don't know. Maybe. Or it could get good. I just might watch that Prodigy and be like, Star Trek Prodigy is the Star Trek show I didn't know I needed. But I need it and love it. I hope to. Have a better holiday and an even better year to come. And to paraphrase both the Power Rangers and Star Trek in a mashed up way, may the power live long and prosper. Keep believing in business before friendship, getting what you negotiate rather than what you deserve, and placing your characters before your universe rather than the other way around. Donnie, you learned quickly. I like that. Please take care of yourselves and each other and keep masking up. I could do that right now. I've done that once, though. I did wear a mask on the show once. I won't do it right now. I know that I can't give you guys anything over the airwaves. P.S. I still hope for the other two letters they would be read in a future show, whether before or after 2021 begins, if possible. Fingers crossed. I don't know. Are your letters up on the website? They could be. I'll check. I'll have to look and see. This next one comes from Mike F. Hi, Rob, and to the Post-Geek Singularity. It's me again, Mike F., the self-appointed guardian of Filipino cinema. I don't know if you've read my previous letter, which is the first installment of my new segment, which is the unofficial spin-off whining about Filipino movies. In this letter, I am moving on to the second installment, which I'm going to feature a very recent film. It is the 2020 drama film Fangirl, directed by Antoinette Jadon, pronounced Hadani. Hadani. Fangirl, directed by Antoinette Hadani. Thank you for that pronunciation. I very much appreciate that. Which is one of the official entries in the currently running 2020 Metro Manila Film Festival. It stars rising actress Charlie Dizon and Paolo Avellino, playing a fictionalized version of himself. The story revolves around an obsessed teenage girl who spent an unforgettable night with her idol, Paolo Avellino. I'm not going to discuss the plot much because of spoilers, and there are elements that weren't shown in the trailer, so I will do my part not revealing that. There have been a lot of films that deal with celebrity obsession, but some of them are too over the top, at least for me. What I love about Fangirl is their nuanced way of tackling that. They were able to show why the main character loves Paolo. It's not just obsession or being a fanatic or worshiping a celebrity. They went deeper on that, and they went grounded. Much of the story is told from her perspective, and it gave us a POV on being a fan that most of us won't usually think of. It's also a coming-of-age story since the main character gets to learn some things as she spends time with Paolo. Dazan gave a wonderful breakthrough performance as the main character, who, by the way, is unnamed until the end part of the film. What a fantastic performance it was. She has a lot of emotional scenes, and she nailed every single one of them. It's a heavy role, and it is impressive for someone who has a first-time lead in a movie. She's going to have a great career in years to come. As for Avellino, even though he was playing a fictionalized version of himself, he's playing a challenging character that really tested his acting skills. I won't reveal why exactly, but you'll get it when you see it. I've seen Avellino in numerous films and shows, and this is definitely one of his best. It's also a well-written film with witty dialogue in some parts. Fangirl is the film in the festival that was one of my most anticipated because I've heard nothing but good things about it thanks to a successful run in the Tokyo International Film Festival. The Hollywood Reporter even gave it a positive review. The film certainly lived up to my expectations. I really love the film, and it's definitely one of the best Filipino films I've seen in recent years. This is also, and let me get the director. It is Antoinette Hadani. So I want to make sure that I got that correct. This is also Hadani's best film so far in her career. She's directed a lot of wonderful romantic films for the past several years, and this is her most mature film yet, and it's her best. She proved here why she is one of the best directors working today in Philippine cinema, and I hope she'll do more films outside the romance genre because she proved here that she is capable of doing more beyond that. Anyway, I really like the film. Luckily, the film festival is virtual, so everyone worldwide can watch it through the Filipino VOD platform Upstream. And since you put it here, let me put it into the live chat. This sounds like a movie that is up my alley. So I will definitely want to check that out. So thanks for that. For my bottoms up scale, I'm giving it 4 glasses of wine. Anyway, that's all my letter for now. I hope you will all check out the wonderful Filipino film. I think a lot of you will like it. I actually won't mind if it becomes my country's entry at the Academy Awards for Best International Feature Film. But anyway, thank you for reading. I hope you all had a wonderful Christmas and stay safe. Well, Mike F., I want to thank you. I always love learning about movies from around the world. I wonder, can you get physical media? Are there Filipino home video labels putting these movies out? That sounds like something I would want to own. This one, would you believe a letter from Omar94? Our own Omar94 writes in and says, "Hi, Rob, moderators, and the Post-Geek Singularity. Something I've noticed with certain actors and actresses, especially now, is how they really only star in hit movies when they're in 1 or 2 franchises. Everything else they star in is hit or miss with the box office. For example, Vin Diesel really only has the Fast and Furious movies, and his voice work in the MCU movies, which are hits. Well, he kind of had the Pitch Black franchise, which, by the way, I did not mention this, but since it is an arm's length, I forgot. Arrow did release as their first 4K disc this year. They did release Pitch Black, which I was pretty stoked by. I hope somebody puts out the Chronicles of Riddick because I love it. Anyway, Chris Pratt is like that as well. Like when he stars in Jurassic World or in an MCU movie, he has hit movies, but everything outside that does not do as well. Although, you know what? Chris Pratt, like when he's in a movie like Moneyball, a movie I thought was terrific, he was great in it. This is something which has happened when franchises started becoming a thing during New Hollywood, where some actors and actresses only get a lot of recognition for being in 1 or 2 franchises, and their movies outside of them did not always do so well. Mark Hamill really only had Star Wars, which gave him recognition, where he struggled outside of that with the exception of doing voice work as the Joker on television. Sylvester Stallone really only had Rocky and Rambo, which did really well, but everything out of that was unclear, as he had flops like Rhinestone, Oscar, and Stopper My Mom Will Shoot, for example, but he also had hits like Cliffhanger and Demolition Man. However, not all of them were like that. Arnold Schwarzenegger had franchises like Conan and Terminator, which did well, but he also had other hit movies outside of those which solidified his status as a big name, like Twins, Kindergarten Cop, Total Recall, and True Lies. Same thing with Harrison Ford. He had franchises like Star Wars and Indiana Jones, but he also had hit movies outside of them to solidify his status as a big name, like Witness, Presumed Innocent. My God, I love that movie. The Fugitive and Air Force One. Sigourney Weaver had the Alien and Ghostbusters films, but outside of that, her movies were hit or miss, as she had hits like Working Girl, but flops like 1492 Conquest of Paradise. Bruce Willis had the Die Hard movies, but also had hit movies outside of that, like Pulp Fiction, The Fifth Element, Armageddon, The Sixth Sense, and Unbreakable. Mel Gibson had the Mad Max and Lethal Weapon films, but was also in hit movies outside of those, like Braveheart, Ransom, and What Women Want. Actors and actresses who didn't do franchises were able to star in a series of hit movies to solidify their statuses as big names. Michael Douglas had a number of hit movies to establish himself as a big name, like Romancing the Stone, Fatal Attraction, Wall Street, and Basic Instinct. By the way, he also produced, as many people tend to forget, the Academy Award-winning One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. Yes, that's right. Michael Douglas produced that movie. Julia Roberts had a number of hit movies like Pretty Woman, Hook, and My Best Friend's Wedding, which established her as a big name. That was similar to classic Hollywood, where there weren't really any franchises, unless you count something like when Sean Connery did James Bond, so actors and actresses starred in a variety of different films, which made them big names. Cary Grant starred in hit movies, which solidified him as a big name, like Bringing Up Baby, The Philadelphia Story, Notorious, To Catch a Thief, and North by Northwest. Audrey Hepburn had hit movies like Roman Holiday, Sabrina, and Breakfast at Tiffany's to solidify her as a big name. That was just something I noticed with actors and actresses over the years, where they no longer had a variety of films to establish them as big names as franchises started coming. Thanks, and live long and prosper. Listen, I think you're bringing up a good point here. One of the most important things, I think, in Hollywood is longevity. And how do you navigate your career? And actors especially, actors have a team of people that help to manage their careers. They've obviously got their agents and their managers and their lawyers, all people who really weigh in on what actors and actresses should do. Now, obviously, as we all know, as I always say, as Bob Sugar said in Jerry Maguire, it ain't show friends, it is show business. And what you're trying to do, what any actor is trying to do, is pick projects that are not only great projects, but that will hopefully further their career. Like, for instance, Arnold Schwarzenegger had Conan the Barbarian. I mean, until Conan came out in 1982, directed, of course, by the great John Milius, with that wonderful Basil Polidor score and Sandal Bergman's co-starring and Mako and James Earl Jones. It was a great move for him, because obviously he had his thick Austrian accent to deal with. And again, Conan, Cimmerian, whatever, it was okay that he had that accent. It was a perfect role. And then what did James Cameron do? James Cameron didn't originally want to cast Arnold Schwarzenegger in the role of the Terminator. But again, and that was really after Piranha 2: The Spawning, which we all, if you read about what happened there, James Cameron certainly doesn't consider Piranha 2: The Spawning his finest moment, even though that, I guess, technically was the first film he was directing. But it was a brilliant conceit of his to go with Arnold. Can anybody imagine another Terminator in that role? I mean, obviously we saw Christina Loken in Terminator 3 and Robert Patrick as the T-1000, but come on. Was there anybody that could have played that role? I mean, it would be like when Sylvester Stallone was first going to play the character in Beverly Hills Cop. It would have been a way different movie. Would it have been as successful? I think probably not. And I think the real way to navigate a career is for an actor to pick the roles that best suit them. The problem is everyone wants the big money. And franchise pictures bring in that big money. Nowadays, the franchises are bigger than the actors in those roles. That's why the MCU can get the actors they want. Now it's for somebody like, say, a Benedict Cumberbatch, he might not, as an actor, might want to stretch, but when he gets to be in a movie like, well, Doctor Strange or Infinity War or whatever, what that buys for an actor like Benedict Cumberbatch, who has an incredible range as an actor, it just solidifies, it shores up his ability to go do what he wants. He's a great dramatic actor, and also I think British actors with their kind of versatility, if he wants to go back and do more seasons of Sherlock or be the voice of Smaug and Desolation of Smaug, he can do that. That's what actors want. I think I used to talk to my actor friends, and everybody wants to be a star, sure. but it's the character actors, the people like the John Lithgows of the world that have worked for decades. Even though Meryl Streep is one of our greatest actresses and she's won Academy Awards, she's a character actress. Obviously she's a leading actress as well. But, I mean, if she wants to go play Margaret Thatcher, she can go play Margaret Thatcher. You know, if she wants to play a thinly veiled version of Anna Wintour, she can go do that. And I think that's what an actor really wants, is that kind of versatility. So you can jump in and out of things. Obviously, Sylvester Stallone, his looks and his acting ability limited him, but Stallone knew this. I mean, if you want to look at somebody who's managed their career correctly, look at Stallone all the way back to, I mean, yeah, you could say that, okay, he was Machine Gun Joe Viterbo in Death Race 2000, and he was awesome as Machine Gun Joe Viterbo in Death Race 2000. But after that, Rocky comes out a year later. And remember, he did First Blood in the early 80s. So while he tried to do things like Fist and the soccer movie Victory, you know, he really understood and played to his strengths. Remember, I mean, he even did an arm wrestling movie for Cannon, Over the Top. Stallone knew what he was doing. He managed his career well, and I'm sure while maybe he wanted to go, I don't know, play Caravaggio in some movie, he knew he could never do that. So he managed his career right, and his career longevity is proof of that. Rocky was in 76 actually, or won the Academy Award in 76, but opened in 75. Maybe it was 76. One of those 2 years. But, I mean, think about that. That was 44 years ago. And he had a Rambo movie come out, in the last year. That's some career longevity. But that's what actors want to do. You know, and the big money is in franchises, sure. But I think what actors really want is they want a career like, look at Tom Cruise. Risky Business, my favorite of his early films, was 1983. It's 2020. And Tom Cruise, I mean, he's beginning to look his age. He's becoming seasoned. But, man, there's an actor who has managed his career well. I mean, he was a huge hit. He was a huge star. He didn't need the Mission Impossible movies, but they have, isn't it funny that it's a franchise that revitalized his career, but it's also a franchise that's incredibly, it's a 25-year-old franchise, which is incredible. And so I think what any actor wants is longevity, and they want a career and they want to manage it in that kind of a way, which I think is good. Guess what? Omar94 has another letter. Hi, Rob, moderators, and Post-Geek Singularity. I'm here to give my 2 reviews for 2 movies, Soul and Wonder Woman 1984. I will start with Soul since Wonder Woman will be quite long. So here goes. For reviewing Soul, I'm not sure if you're okay with spoilers yet. Hey, it's on. Why not? So I won't go into complete detail. Overall, I liked it, but I didn't love it like everyone else. That was something I was apprehensive about before seeing the film, where I would like it but not love it, and finding it overhyped because I haven't really felt there's been a truly great Pixar film in a long time. The last truly great Pixar movie to me was Toy Story 3, even though people love movies such as Inside Out and Coco. I did not. I was not a fan of Inside Out, but I did find Coco good but not great. Man, I loved Coco. I was blown away by Coco, actually. I just feel there hasn't been a Pixar movie since Toy Story 3, which has been top-tier Pixar like Toy Story 1, 2, and 3, Monsters, Inc., Finding Nemo, The Incredibles, Ratatouille, and Up. But anyway, on to Soul. As I said earlier, I did like it, but not love it. Why didn't you feel those others? Why do you think that Pixar movies are not up to snuff as far as you're concerned? I'd be curious to hear what you have to say. The story was good, and there were some twists and surprises I did not see coming. The animation was, without a doubt, amazing, and all the music was good, especially all the scenes when Jamie Foxx's character Joe would play the piano. Without giving too much away, there's a Freaky Friday segment where it got particularly funny when Joe wakes up in a cat's body and 22 wakes up in his body. There was also a nod to Ratatouille when Remy tastes food and we start seeing all of his feelings and emotions get personified in shapes and patterns, but it has to do with 22 and Joe's body eating pizza. Overall, I did find Soul good, just not great like everyone else did. Now, I will review Wonder Woman 84. Let me start off with saying I really liked the first Wonder Woman, as did I, even though I found the third act so-so, as did I, and I was really looking forward to the sequel. I did get a chance to see it in theaters and had a lot of feelings about it. Overall, though, I tried, and thinking there are aspects of it I like, I just could not get into it. I did like Hans Zimmer's score and the cinematography, especially for the opening on Themyscira and the scenes when the invisible jet going through the fireworks, which I liked from a visual standpoint, but that seemed like a jet flying through fireworks going off might be a little dangerous. While Gal Gadot's performance was better, she still was not that great, in my opinion. The best part of this film to me was Chris Pine. This was similar to the first film, where even though the movie was called Wonder Woman and Gal Gadot was the lead, I thought Pine was the best part of the film. Every scene he was in made the film better, and I was always waiting for him to be back on screen. When it came to the second film, it was the same thing, as I kept waiting for when he would appear. However, his return did not make sense. He came back, but in someone else's body. But we see him as Chris Pine, but everyone else sees him as someone else. That made no sense to me, because I felt if he just came back and looked like Chris Pine to everyone, everything would still happen as it did, and it would not change what happened in the story. I just want to editorialize right here. Omar, I'm right there with you. Like, if your wish was Steve Trevor were to come back, wouldn't he just come back? In what the machinations of his possessing of this other man's body made literally no sense to anything else that was going on. What happened to that other guy? Was he aware of what happened? And at the end, when Gal Gadot sees this guy, was she sleeping with him the whole time? Like, is that what he looked like? And she just sensed it was Chris Pine, Steve Trevor? That was really confusing the way it was done, and clearly it's left most of the audience perplexed. The main problem for me came down to the story. The problem being it was all over the place, and a lot of things made no sense, like the stuff with Chris Pine. The main issue with the story came from its length, as it was too long and dragged. The movie would have been better if it was streamlined, as there were many parts which could have been removed to make the film shorter, better paced, and more focused. The opening flashback on Themyscira could have been cut, as it did not really add anything afterwards in a big way. The whole golden armor thing was completely pointless, since again it did not add anything, and it could have been removed. Kristen Wiig as Barbara Minerva, aka Cheetah, did not need to be in the movie, as she doesn't really do a whole lot, and if you think about it, and does not really serve an important purpose in the story. Even though she helps get the plot across involving Maxwell Lord getting the artifact thing, which grants wishes, the whole thing could have been reworked where Diana inadvertently lets Maxwell Lord get a hold of that thing. The character would have been removed entirely, and the movie would have still been able to have everything happen with Maxwell Lord. The movie would have had a more focused story if it was just Diana against Maxwell Lord. Cheetah didn't really serve any purpose. There was a lack of Wonder Woman in costume, as she only appears a few times. The action wasn't terrible, but not that great, unlike the first film where the action was much better. Pedro Pascal, I think, is a good actor, but Maxwell Lord was not that interesting as a villain, as he was pretty much all over the place, where at some points he is calm and relaxed, and other points where he's really over the top and megalomaniacal. The whole thing with wishes was all over the place. Diana slowly starts losing her powers because of her wish to bring Steve Trevor back. Well, okay, that could have been done differently. I'm okay with the idea of there being consequences for making a wish, but it was done strangely. Why not just have Diana's powers be gone entirely when she wishes Steve Trevor returns? That would have made it more emotional and impactful when they say goodbye, as Diana has to save the world, realizing she gets her powers back by undoing her wish. Also, when everyone undoes their wishes near the end, wouldn't everyone remember what happened, since Washington, D.C. and all the other places were still in ruins? The movie just jumps to winter, but nobody talks about what happens, even though characters like Diana and Maxwell Lord still remember everything which happened. And part of where she gets her powers back was very strange. All of a sudden she can fly, but then she starts using her lasso to swing on lightning. It was all just very complicated. Why not just use the invisible plane she used earlier with Steve Trevor, and also like in the comics? Speaking of which, the way the jet turned invisible came out of nowhere. Diana just brings it up out of nowhere, how to turn things invisible. There was literally no build-up to it. It just happened. I'm not entirely sure why the film was set in 1984, as it really didn't add to anything. The setting of the first film in World War I made sense, but here with the 80s, it did not. I think the movie would have been more interesting if it was set earlier, either during World War II when the Wonder Woman character was created in the comics, or maybe during the 60s and 70s during the period of second-wave feminism with Gloria Steinem and the Linda Carter TV show. Also, the dialogue was really corny at times, especially near the end when Diana gives that speech. All in all, Wonder Woman 84 was not for me. I felt like the writers just put all of their ideas together in the script and didn't go and polish it. If the script was streamlined by doing things like removing characters, cutting scenes out, and establishing rules on wishing, we would have had a better movie. Those are my reviews for Soul and Wonder Woman 84. I would love to hear what you and others have to say. Thanks, and live long and prosper. Well, Omar, you heard me wax rhapsodic, or maybe not so rhapsodic, about Wonder Woman 84 yesterday, and we'll be talking about it tonight on Whining About Movies. I was perplexed by the whole thing, and upon reflection, I'm even more perplexed now. I think one of the things about the reason that superhero movies, and I was saying this yesterday, are popular is because they have made us believe that all of these superhero movies are not taking place in some weird production-designed vision of some urban hellscape like in the Gotham City designed by Anton Furst in Tim Burton's Batman, but these are now set in our world in a way. And so our wish fulfillment of thinking, my God, superheroes could be in our world right now, flying right outside our windows. I think that's what we really want. And one of the reasons that superhero movies are particularly popular now is because we're now able to watch these films and feel like, oh, this is sort of our wish fulfillment. And I think what happened with Wonder Woman 84 is it went way, way too far into the fantasy realm idea. I mean, bringing dead people back. It's weird seeing a movie where the whole opening, you have Robin Wright tell Diana as a little girl when she's bested by her peers, or the people that are not her peers but could be when she gets older. It's so weird that there's a talk of the truth in the beginning of the movie, and that you have to watch Diana flirt with this resurrected Steve Trevor, which she knows isn't the truth at all. It's bizarre. I would think that the idea of having somebody resurrected from beyond the grave after more than 60 years, and your first impulse is, oh my God, you're here. I mean, Diana would be the first person to be like, this is a lie. You're not really here. This is not true. And that, why would she fall into it? It just seems bizarre. I mean, why would you suddenly bed down with a non-corporeal entity that's come back from being dead for 60 years? Like, while it might seem like something to do, not really very superheroic. This can have good circumstances, but nope. She just is like, oh, Steve, you're here. I love you. I look at Wonder Woman, I'm like, there's no way. Like, would the reverse be true? If Lois Lane died, do you think Superman would go sleep with a resurrected Lois Lane? Superman would be like, well, this is so not right. And it was weird. All of Wonder Woman 84 to me was weird. I didn't buy any of it. I talked about it, and we'll talk about it tonight on Whining About Movies. It was not a superhero movie to me. It was a balls-to-the-wall fantasy film that had no... I couldn't buy into it. I could not suspend my disbelief because the filmmakers were asking me to accept things that I thought, frankly, were stupid, which is this wish fulfillment thing. And I still couldn't get over the fact that when you wish for something, there's still an intellect behind granting those wishes. And then this was just too much. I didn't buy it. I thought the whole conceit, especially because where has Diana been for the last 60 years? I mean, they make a big point of her getting involved in World War I. You would think that if she's coming into man's world and is staying there and is the unofficial ambassador of the Amazonian people in our world, that she would be involved in most of the world events, at least behind the scenes. Well, what the hell was she doing in World War II? Why, if Wonder Woman exists, why did she allow concentration camps to exist? Why did she allow on her watch the Jews and 6 million other people get exterminated? Why did she allow Stalin to rise up and kill 20 million of his own people? Why did that happen? Where were you, Diana? And it seemed to me that by setting the movie, and I'm not saying that you need to make Diana the savior of mankind, but like, are you telling me that in 60 years she met no other interesting men? She'd known Steve Trevor for basically a couple of weeks at tops before he dies. Like, what about the Steve Trevor of World War II? And I thought that was really odd. Like, if I had made this movie, you had that opening sequence in Themyscira, and I'm like, okay, but why not show us a montage of what Diane had been doing up until now? And I don't know why it took place in 1984. The 1984 that we saw was a stylized movie version of 1984. It certainly wasn't the real version of 1984 that I lived through. So it was odd. I thought Wonder Woman was quite odd, and all of the problems that I had, most of the problems I had, were with a script that was just rather nonsensical. But that's just me. Now this is Mike F. writes in, and this might be the same Mike F., but maybe not. Hi, Rob, and to the Post-Geek Singularity. In one of my previous letters, I discussed my thoughts on modern Star Trek, in which we park our shuttlecraft in the same shuttle bay. As for the latest episode of Star Trek Discovery, I thought that was just awful, especially their explanation of the burn. Spoiler alert, but I can't believe that the explanation they come up with is that there's a Kelpian with some sort of anger issue that somehow affected the entire universe or whatever. By the way, in a holographic simulation where he's lived his entire life for 100 years and on the surface of a planet made entirely of dilithium, that somehow in utero he was affected by it is, I have to say, and the explanation of the burn might be the single dumbest. It is, you know what, in my mind, of all of the science fiction TV I have ever seen, Star Trek Discovery reached a new low with their explanation of the burn. Now, I know the woman who wrote that episode was Hugo nominated or whatever for Battlestar Galactica. I get it, and I know what you've done. But that doesn't mean that it is the most nonsensical, most ridiculous explanation in the history of science fiction television. I agree with you. And the letter, back to the letter, that was just stupid. In this letter, I'm going to take a look at the person who is handling these modern Star Trek shows, Alex Kurtzman, as well as one of his collaborators, Akiva Goldsman. We complain about modern Star Trek, but I think we should take a look at the people behind it. Let's look at Kurtzman's track record. He co-wrote The Legend of Zorro, a disappointing sequel to The Mask of Zorro. He co-wrote The Island, Mission Impossible 3, Transformers, Star Trek 09, Revenge of the Fallen, Cowboys and Aliens, Star Trek Into Darkness, and The Amazing Spider-Man 2. If you look at those films, they're a mixed bag. Those films are either decent or bad, but of course that's subjective. He directed a drama film called People Like Us, which did not do well at the box office and received mixed reviews. And then there's The Mummy with Tom Cruise, and we know how that went. He also has TV credits, which with Alias, Fringe, Sleepy Hollow, and Hawaii Five-0, but he wasn't very involved with those shows. Looking at his track record, none of them showed that Kurtzman is a great writer, director, or producer, particularly on franchises. It's clear that those projects are just a job for him, and of course the paycheck, because there's a lot of money when you're involved. But I am disappointed that he will be involved in the upcoming Clarice TV series. Well, you'll really be disappointed if you read the pilot, which I have. Really? Are they letting him get involved in that franchise? Ugh. And here's the thing. Because of some complicated rights issues, the show cannot feature or make reference to Hannibal Lecter. Kurtzman said in an interview in EW, "I'm still trying to understand how the rights are divided, but it's been quite liberating because we have no interest in writing about Hannibal. Not because we didn't love the films and the show, but because it was done so well by so many people it didn't feel fresh for us." How can you make a Clarice show without ever referencing Hannibal Lecter, especially if it's supposedly set after Silence of the Lambs? Why won't they just create another procedural show with a new female character? I wish Brian Fuller made Hannibal Season 4 instead. So does the entire planet. They should have given him the rights for Clarice and do his thing, which they absolutely should have. And the fact that Alex Kurtzman and Brian Fuller are co-creators on Discovery adds insult to injury. And I think it's all you need to know about him. Doing a Clarice show without any reference to Lecter is like doing a show centering on Michael Corleone without mentioning Vito. They're just going to ruin the iconic character, and it's going to be bad. As for Akiva Goldsman, yes, he won an Oscar for writing A Beautiful Mind, which is a grounded and non-franchise film. So he has an Oscar. Okay, good for him. But he has good decorations in his office. But then he's involved with franchise films like Batman Forever, Batman and Robin, Lost in Space, The Da Vinci Code, the Divergent series Insurgent, and The Dark Tower. Sigh. I don't know who would look at that and say, geez, He knows how to write good stories based on a franchise. He also directed, wrote, and produced A Winter's Tale, an all-star cast fantasy film that bombed at the box office and was panned by critics. By the way, if you haven't ever read Mark Halpern's book, A Winter's Tale, it is a stunning novel. And he should be, there's a lot he has to atone for in his adaptation of that book. Then he got involved with Titans, which he wasn't very involved. It's like they pulled him in because he has experience in franchises. Now he's with modern Star Trek, particularly on Picard and Strange New Worlds. Sigh. I don't see anything that says Kurtzman and Goldsman are huge Trekkies. They just got involved with franchises, but I don't think they grew up geeking out over Star Trek, which is why the material that we're getting is bad. No, you're absolutely right. Absolutely right. By the way, everybody who's worked on modern Star Trek, aside from J.J. Abrams, talks about how, oh, yeah, I'm a fan of Star Trek. Because why wouldn't you? Who isn't? Who wouldn't say, well, other than J.J. Abrams, I was never a fan of Star Trek. I don't think they grew up geeking out over Star Trek, which is why the material that we're getting is bad. I'm not saying that diehard Trekkie fans are the only ones allowed to get involved in Star Trek shows, but they have no idea what Star Trek's really about. They just write what they think and what they want on Star Trek based on what they know on being involved in a franchise or whatever. I don't know. They're just not qualified to me. Anyways, that's all my letter for now. Thank you for reading, and I'm looking forward to your thoughts. Live long and prosper. Well, Mike, you know me. Look, I think that modern Star Trek, I think Star Trek Discovery and Star Trek Picard, and you know what? There's a lot of people that like them. In my mind, especially as being part of the Star Trek franchise, they are probably two of the worst science fiction shows that have ever been put on television. Ever. Now, forget the fact how much money they spend. They are the most horribly written science fiction I've ever seen, especially part of Star Trek as a franchise. Now, you might come and say, well, Rob, even Star Trek, the original series, I'll concede. And The Children Shall Lead is a hideous, hideous hour of television. And as a Star Trek show, it's fucking awful. You know, Move Along Home from Deep Space Nine's first season, god awful. I have no problem admitting certain episodes. Threshold, Voyager, god awful. I have no problem admitting when Star Trek shows are bad. But the stories that Discovery and Picard are telling are written, they're brain dead, and they don't even address, there's a clear misunderstanding when they talk about doing stories on synths. They don't even know what that is. They don't even define it. According to Star Trek Picard, a synth is it a machine that's anthropomorphized to look like a human being? Well, why is it a synth? Why would anyone have a problem if my computer is shaped like a TV screen, or it's shaped like, or it's ambulatory and it's walking and can talk to me like an android? Why would anyone have a problem with it? It's still a synth, just because something is anthropomorphized. And what if I made, say, an android elephant because I needed something of that size for whatever reason? Would somebody object to that? They don't even make any sense explaining why there's an AI intelligence that wants to destroy all synths. It's all ridiculous. It's all stupid. And I'm with you. And to me, it's not because I worked on Axanar and I feel CBS betrayed us, which I do not. And it's not because I'm an old school Star Trek fan and I don't like the new stuff. No. I don't like bad storytelling. Star Trek Discovery and Star Trek Picard are bad storytelling. It's bad science fiction, it's bad drama, and it's a bastardization of the entire Star Trek franchise as a whole. Now, that's just me. Your mileage may vary. But I think if you were to take a episode, if you took this season of Discovery into a writing class and were to open it up to be analyzed by that writing class, I think the writing class would poke a lot of holes in the storytelling and wonder why the choices are being made and why Star Trek Discovery segregates its characters, which is something else that's bizarre. I don't understand, and but because I'm a student of the franchise, I continue to try to understand. So let's see what anybody is saying. You know what? There's a couple of chats back here that I wanted to get to. And there was things I did not read, and some of them. The Richard sends in a tip and says, I read the Wikipedia synopsis. I read this yesterday, but I'm going to read it again because of your letter. I read the Wikipedia synopsis for the latest Discovery episode. The whole child's brain causing physical consequences in the real world is a neat trope, and the USS Discovery is captured at the end. Is there something awful I missed? I haven't watched it yet. Well, a child's brain causing physical consequences in the real world is a neat trope, but the idea that a child's temper tantrum caused all of the dilithium in the galaxy to explode at the same time makes no sense at all. It doesn't make any sense on any level. That is completely magical thinking. And first of all, think about that. You have a child that's living in a virtual world its entire life that apparently is connected to dilithium because radiation in vitro, something. And he uses the energy from the hologram that he's living in, that he gets to project this what? And it causes dilithium to explode? I'm sorry, but yeah. No. So sorry, can't get into that. So there you go. Anyway, I did want to read that. And I don't know if I read this. I think this is one I missed yesterday. It was sent in after I went off the air. Jaimin D sends in a super chat and says, also, the problem with showing, this is in regards to Wonder Woman, the problem with showing everyone in the world is able to wish is that they're trying to make us believe that every single person in the world has a unique wish. Also, if even one person thinks the world should end, then what? Oh, yeah. You know, the whole world gets a wish, and that's, again, really bad writing. And I'll tell you, like I said about Wonder Woman, I'm like, if it was her, they bring up the idea of the monkey's paw. If it was her who somehow wished Steve Trevor back into existence by accident, what have you, and she was captured or caught up in what had happened, and her relationship with Steve Trevor was leading to an unraveling of the reality of the world, which caused other bad things to go down, that could have been really interesting, and it would have been about Diana Prince. This movie wasn't even really about Wonder Woman. She was reacting to all of this other stuff, but aside from Steve Trevor, it wasn't really about her, whereas the first Wonder Woman was, in fact, about her. Anonymous says, pretend you and a friend are two criminals about to rob houses, and in one house is John McClane, and in the other is Kevin McAllister. Which one do you choose, and which one do you send your friend into? Oh, I would definitely take the Kevin McAllister house because I'm a big kid at heart, so I would understand what he was doing, and I would be able to not succumb to his traps, and my friend would have the shit kicked out of him by John McClane. So this is, I thought, was a really good question. Senor Ashish, our old friend Senor Ashish, says, does the overall end result of a film, if it's good or bad, determine the level of scrutiny moviegoers give that film? Example, no one criticizes how Stark was able to survive experimental heart surgery with a hole in his sternum while in an Afghan cave. In other words, do we just unload on bad films because the overall end result is a bad film and give mediocre or great films with the equivalent criticisms a pass because the whole of these films outweigh the criticisms? Well, I think that's a really good question. And the thing is, with fantasy movies, the question is, do they make you believe? You know, all movies, if you think about it, all movies are fake. They're not real. It's all made up. You know, what you're watching is staged stuff. None of it's real, unless it's, of course, a documentary. So when I say that I'm the viceroy of verisimilitude, what I'm really talking about is every single shot in a movie has to make you believe as an audience member. And there's 10,000 decisions made, the director at the top and then on down. Every single person, from the cinematographer, the costume designer, the makeup people, the art department, everybody. Everybody who's working on a movie are working collectively. They're all bringing their powers to bear to make you believe that the each image, each shot, and by the way, each shot has to convince you. Every time there's a new shot, that shot could fail to make you believe. And if you believe every single shot, and say there's 5, 6, 700 shots in a movie, every one of those has to be believable. You have to believe every single one. You can't just believe half of them and not believe the other half. You have to believe them all. And I think if a movie makes you believe, and again, this is why I don't believe that movies are entirely subjective. There is an objectivity to movies that are really good. And there's an objectivity to the fact that if they make you believe, or if they make the majority of the audience believe in them, there is a certain objectivity that they brought into the game that makes you believe. And that's hard to do. And I think that if you are watching Iron Man and you are with that movie, you're with Tony Stark, you're with that universe, that you can believe that there's something going on in that Afghan cave. Somebody there knows. Like, why wouldn't a capable surgeon be part of the Mujahideen or whatever? Why not? I mean, you could believe that could happen. I can make that leap. But I think the problem with a movie like Wonder Woman 84, why are there so many people that don't believe it? Well, I think it's the central conceit of having a wish. Why would anybody who likes superhero movies want to have the villain, the bad guy, that the power the bad guy has is the ability to grant wishes? This is a fantasy conceit. Now, there is magic in superhero films. We know that. You know, Mr. Mr. Mixelpidlick, whatever, that Superman is vulnerable to magic. We understand that. But in our superhero environment, the idea, and again, I went into this on my show yesterday, the idea of wish fulfillment, what is the mechanism beyond, there's too many questions. Like, I do not believe, in the context of Wonder Woman 84, that that a god, a nameless god, we don't really know who it is, imbued this stone with the power of wishes, because even that, I can't believe that. My ability to suspend my disbelief about wishes, out the window. Don't believe that at all. And the reason that I can't believe that is because there is no, like, science fiction. Arthur C. Clarke famously said, now let me get the exact quote, because I always paraphrase this and I want to get it right. Okay, I'll get the exact quote. Here's what Arthur C. Clarke said about technology. Any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. And Clarke's 3 laws. And I think that Clarke's 3 laws are very interesting. And he said this. Number 1, when a distinguished but elderly scientist states that something is possible, he is almost certainly right. When he states that something is impossible, he is very probably wrong. Number 2, the only way of discovering the limits of the possible is to venture a little way past them into the impossible. And then 3, any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. Those are Arthur C. Clarke's 3 laws. I think in a superhero movie, we saw this in Suicide Squad, there was a mystical something. But I think in modern superhero movies, certainly in the MCU, we do have a sorcerer, we have a reality bending, and we're going to see this in Wanda Maximoff, the Scarlet Witch. So I'll buy her reality warping powers because somehow they're tied into the physical world somehow, and because she's incredibly powerful. But if you look at a lot of the stuff, even the way they made Asgard work, Asgard's more of an alien planet with really, really advanced technology. Now, yes, Odin can imbue Mjolnir with certain powers, and that's. But even that, there's limits there. So when you are talking about wishes, and now talk about wishes on a global scale, so 7 billion people are making wishes. I can't go that far. Like, I can't, within the context of the way Wonder Woman has been set up in the DC universe, cinematic universe, to me it's gone too far. That kind of a plot line has gone too far. When you are launching nuclear missiles and they're disappearing and all that, I can't go with you there. And I think that's a problem with the movie. And none of the villains, there's no, like, Wonder Woman is cleaning up a mess that isn't hers directly. She's like one step behind. She's not, and it felt to me like there were really no stakes other than to save the world. There was nothing personal about what was going on. Like, even Barbara Minerva that becomes Cheetah, she's like, oh, this is terrible. It's not really about her. It's not a conflict that Barbara doesn't like Diana. It's they were friends. This issue's Barbara Minerva's problem. Like, they don't even have a real beef with one another, and I think that was really, really problematic. And I just don't believe, they don't believe. I just didn't believe it. I didn't believe it. Anyway, let me see what people are saying. Willow says, the thing that bothers me the most about Aquaman to this day is that they keep on calling Aquaman's weapon a trident when it clearly has 5 prongs. A good point. That is a good point. I think, though, I think that a trident becomes a word like to copy something, we'd say, can you Xerox that? When really a Xerox is a brand name, and there are other copiers, but it becomes ubiquitous by saying trident. It looks vaguely like a trident. It doesn't matter. But you're not wrong. You are not wrong, Willow, and you're usually not wrong. So, but you're right. That is a very good point. Steve Marvin became a member. Thanks, Steve, for becoming a member of the channel. Martinos Dilithium Mining sends in a tip. Says, time-limited offer. Buy cheap dilithium now. Guaranteed to increase aircraft lifespan and warp speed. Actual speed and or long-lasting effects may vary. Damage to 50-year-old franchises not covered. Consulte LaForge before installation. That's very funny, Martinos Dilithium Mining. Juan and Bongo became a member. I like that, Juan and Bongo. Well, thank you for that. Will N sends in a tip and says, watched Wonder Woman 84, debating if it's worse than Rise of Skywalker. I was wondering if good directors are aware of the poor product they put out. Are they oblivious because everyone around them tells them how great that crap is? Will, you know what? As somebody who has both directed and edited a lot more, but directed and edited movies, I find that question comes up in my mind a lot. And I think, look, here's my philosophy about making a film. The better the script is, and the more preparation that you do for, like, I am seriously working on getting a movie made that I've wanted to make for 20 years. I have the script. Someone else wrote it. I've been rewriting it. And I'm also, at the same time, with the help of an artist, Xevious, I'm creating an animatic of the first 10, 15 minutes of the movie to show my vision of the film, so I can go in and say, this is what I want to make. It is only the third movie that it's, if you include Free Enterprise 2, the fourth movie that I've ever really wanted to make, but I've wanted to make this movie the longest. And I know, like, to make this film, I know that the script has to be right. And when you're making a film, you always have to trust to the script. And the script that I'm making is a balls-to-the-wall fantasy script. And there's a lot of the fantastical in this script. And I'll flat out tell you, one of the characters is the devil. He's the main character. And when you're dealing with those kinds of things, you need to know exactly, like, how all of this works. And in my mind, one of the things about Wonder Woman 84, which is a fatal flaw with the movie, is the conceit, the whole idea of wishing. Because, somebody said to me, or somebody wrote on recently yesterday, I think, left a comment on the YouTube page thinking that they don't always agree with I'm always spouting my theories of storytelling. And that some people buy into them like I'm a cult leader. And I think that's kind of funny. Like my views of these things are constantly changing. But I will say this, I've been a student of storytelling, specifically storytelling in film, but also because I love science fiction, fantasy, and horror, I've spent an inordinate amount of time contemplating the mechanics of working in science fiction, fantasy, and horror. And I think it is critical. Anybody that is working in science fiction, fantasy, and horror, if you are going to fall back on magic or advanced technology or whatever it is, it works best if you understand how all of this works within the context of your story. So if somebody just can blanket, like, wield magic and like, I form of whatever, or here's $1 million or whatever, you need to understand, how does that magic really work? Like, for instance, there's got to be some kinds of limitations. Like even in Harry Potter, well, you have a wand and you have to learn certain spells. You have to be able to say things. Now, I'll buy that there are spells of, say, protection, spells of health, that you can do those kinds of things. But in the case of Wonder Woman 84, when you can wish for things and then your wishes suddenly take on physical characteristics, like the guy, the sheikh who wants to have his homeland encircled. When your wish suddenly has a giant wall appear, right? Well, he didn't ask for his country to be walled off. He asked for his country, and it's never been walled off. There was never a 1,000-foot wall around his country, ever. But when he asked for this wish to be made, suddenly the answer to that is, and people will say, like in Wishmaster, when you ask for something to be granted, the Wishmaster, because the Wishmaster is like a creature, can make those changes. You know that there's an intellect behind the you ask for a wish, the fulfillment of that wish has a twist, because somebody, a creature, is actually making an intellectual decision about the wish that you've asked for. But in Wonder Woman 84, and I was trying to explain this yesterday, but I didn't do a good job, these wishes have a methodology behind them. Meaning that, okay, I wish for my homeland to be restored to the way it was and all the infidels expelled. Well, where was the decision made to build a 1,000-foot wall? And I know, go with me on this, because that is, why not just expel people and say, okay, you're sovereign, your homeland is yours, and all the infidels we've removed them. There's a decision that was made after you've made your wish. And it seems silly. I know this is a weird thing to be bitching and moaning and complaining about, but who decided after you've made your wish, like the God, let's just go with the fact that some God, maybe it was the devil, created this wish thing, like your wish is made flesh. But wishes are open to interpretation, the words you've used, what you really meant. So is that God? When someone makes a wish, is he wherever he is or she is or it is? Is that God is up there? When the God hears the wish, has it also imbued this rock with the ability to discern, to make decisions? Because that's my problem, is that once you start asking people for wishes, just magical wishes, if there's no intellect behind the wish, then how is the way the wish manifests itself, how does it show up? I know this is a weird logic, bizarre, it's a thought exercise, really. But it's like, why a 1,000-foot wall as opposed to, say, a moat? Like somebody putting a moat around the country. Like these are decisions that have to be made. And even if you're making a wish, there has to be some decision in there, right? So when all of these wishes are happening, it makes no sense to me that they can happen at all without some kind of intellect behind them. Because the intellect has to figure out, like, oh, well, I'm going to build you a wall instead of a moat. So you know that's why there's a genie and a magical lamp. You rub the magic lamp and the genie comes out. It's the genie that grants you the 3 wishes. It's not the lamp. So if you have the rock and you're going to wish on this rock, if there's no genie, There's decisions about the wishes that you're making that, like if I say, okay, I said this on Let's Get Physical Media. If you say, I want to live in a giant mansion, okay, that's your wish. Well, what kind of architecture style? Is it going to be modern? Is it going to be a Victorian mansion? Like if your wish is that, how does the wish get fulfilled? There's a decision. There's an intellectual decision that has to be made there by the person. If you just how can a rock with no intellect behind it? It's just a rock imbued with this power. If you ask for a mansion when there's 25 different kinds of mansions, how would you get one? Like how would it know? And why would it pick one over the other? So in my mind, as a fantasy, science fiction, horror fan, I can't go there with you. When you start asking about wishes, as far as writing goes, I can't go. You have left me at this conceit. I do not believe your conceit because it does not work from a storytelling standpoint. Now, somebody can say, well, Rob, I believe it. Well, that's fine if you believe it. That's fine. But if there are other like-minded people like me, well, then the writer has failed. Because what you have to do is, like all the great movies convince most of the audience of their reality, of the verisimilitude. And as the viceroy of verisimilitude, I am telling you, the problem, and this is the same problem with modern Star Trek. The people writing Star Trek don't understand, and I understand, I get it. She wrote the Pegasus and all that. The woman who wrote this week's episode of Discovery, she has not written a great episode of science fiction. She's written fantasy. Star Trek Discovery is a show that is a fantasy, not a science fiction show. And as somebody who is a discerning watcher and reader of science fiction, there are too many times when Star Trek Discovery has asked me, like, they don't know what a synth is in Picard. They're like, there's a group of AIs out there that are going to come, once living people have created synths, they're going to come and kill all the living people. Well, why? Why? And how do they define synths? And why is your vision of what an AI is so limited? I mean, you know, and that's where I think I draw the line. Now, a lot of people don't care. A lot of people are like, well, okay, wishes are just wishes. Yes, but for me, in a fantasy context, you need to set up rules behind these wishes. Like, you only get 3. You get 3 wishes, and if you're like, if you ask something, and well, that was your first. Well, I didn't mean it to be. Well, sorry, you asked. You said it. There's got to be rules, and there's where great fantasy, science fiction, and horror writing come in. Like, okay, if you're dealing with lycanthropy, somebody's a werewolf. All right, your ask in that story is that somebody, a man, a human being, or a human female, can transform into a werewolf. Like, I'll buy that. That's your ask. That's your ask. That there's something in your cells or whatever. That's your fantasy, science fiction, horror conceit. Somebody can turn into a werewolf. Well, now it's on a lunar cycle. Now they've taken something. Wolves, they bark at the moon. They howl at the moon. That's a thing that real wolves do. So then you can be like, oh, okay, well, let's tie in lycanthropy to a lunar cycle. When there's a full moon, you're a werewolf. And then you have to add, if you attack somebody and they don't die, well, then they're going to turn into a werewolf too. And if what you have to do is if you bite somebody and they're a werewolf, then you still survive. You're no longer a werewolf. You're passing on a curse. Whatever. The mechanics of being a werewolf, I believe them. Once I get past my initial ask of that werewolves exist, lycanthropy is real, well then, if you give me rules to govern that, I'll believe it more. And I think that's where great science fiction, fantasy, and horror begin. It's the beginning and ending. You have these great big asks. Magic is real. Okay. But there's a school. You have to learn how to wield it. Love it. All of a sudden, I'm in. If magic is just, well, there's magic in the world, and whatever you want, it just happens. No. There's now rules. J.K. Rowling is, you have to go to Hogwarts. You know, you have to learn how to wield magic. And you can't just do anything. There isn't magic powerful enough where you can go, bing, here's another Earth. Now there's 2 Earths, and I can go live on a better Earth. Magic is not that powerful. You know, you've limited the magic that you have. And I think that's the key to making any of this kind of stuff work. Anyway, I've gone on and on and on and on and on and on and on. Let's see. You guys have asked worse than Rise of Skywalker. So anyway, I don't know if I answered your question, but Golden Brem sends in a tip and says, as a German, it's my solemn duty to inform you with a heavy heart that Yello isn't a German band, but a Swiss one. Swiss German, but Swiss nonetheless. Most Americans wouldn't care for the nuance that I probably do. I do. And I didn't realize. I just thought it was German. Swiss, I didn't realize it was Swiss German. Live long and prosper. I have no problem being corrected by that. I've always been in my mind, I've always thought of Yello as a German band. I've never thought of them as a Swiss German band, but now I stand corrected. Cedric Taylor sends in a super chat and says, the Prime Directive. Hey, I love the Prime Directive. Again, something that is there, you break it or you don't. But I think the Prime Directive is really important. I think it's one of the great things that Star Trek has. Lie sends in a super chat and says, how was Steve Trevor able to come out of World War I and able to hop in a plane 60 years later with the advancements in avionics and was able to fly it? Again, don't know. Part of my disbelief is there. Now, you could have said something like, well, the product of her wish is that Steve Trevor was imbued with this knowledge somehow. But yes, I think that's problematic. This is the difference between good fantasy and bad fantasy. In good fantasy, that question would be answered because it's important. Steve Trevor was a pilot in World War I. Why would he know how to fly a jet? That is a basic question. And the fact that nobody answers it in the film is problematic because you asked the question, as did I. And what it does is it diminishes the film as a whole. And the thing about Wonder Woman 84 is it has decision after decision after decision after decision like that. And collectively, they torpedo the film. And I would have thought, as anybody, and this is my problem with a lot of Star Trek Discovery, because a lot of the writing staff is, I think, unfamiliar with science fiction as a literary genre, they don't understand this. They just think that well, it's science fiction, who cares? But the people who care are science fiction fans. Your audience cares. And when you make this, you have Steve get behind a jet. First of all, in what universe does anybody go to the Smithsonian and suddenly, like, why is it that the Air and Space Museum, they just have air? Where were they? They go into some airfield. I don't know if I thought it was the Smithsonian because you had lifting. It looked like the Air and Space Museum. You walk out of the Air and Space Museum and there's just an airfield there. Well, and there's planes that are like gassed up on the tarmac, ready to fly. I hated that. I'm like, come on, that's not how it works. That's not how any there's no airplane in the world that is just sitting on the tarmac, gassed up and ready to go. You've got to be at a working airfield. So it was two things that were stupid. And I'm looking at this going, it's like in the Transformers movie when they're at the Air and Space Museum and they walk out and they're in the middle of the freaking desert. And you're like, wait, what? I again, that's another thing that I tune out. I'm like, that's unreal. I don't buy it. Sante sends in a super chat. Sante says, do you think this POS Wonder Woman 84 will make the Suicide Squad a bigger hit, or will it make people apprehensive and wary of DC movies? I don't think it's going to no, because here's the thing. People are going to know that it's a James Gunn movie. They've already seen Suicide Squad. Suicide Squad made way more money than it deserved to make because it was a really hatchet job of a movie. So I don't think people look at a movie like Wonder Woman and then decide Suicide Squad is, only fanboys talk that way, and fangirls. Like, the DCEU. I think what Wonder Woman 84 is going to do is make people worried about Wonder Woman 3. People are going to be suspect and go, well, this better be good. This better be a good story. Cedric Taylor says it was a Q child that yeah, but even a Q child. So why didn't Q Why didn't John Delancey show up and clap his hands or snap his fingers and make the burn go away? I don't think it was a cute child. Marty MF sends in a super chat and says, "What is your favorite TOS episode and why?" Well, you have to catch me on a. It depends what day you catch me on, but I can tell you why I like my whether it's I'll throw out some TOS episodes: Balance of Terror, Doomsday Machine, The Immunity Syndrome, Mirror Mirror, City on the Edge of Forever, Arena. Errand of Mercy, Day of the Dove, The Enterprise Incident, The Tholian Web, whatever. Why I like Star Trek episodes is, first of all, I love the characters. I love the stories, the science fiction stories they tell. For instance, The Immunity Syndrome is one of my favorite episodes of the original series. It's definitely probably in my top 5, but let's just say top 10. The premise of that episode is that a giant 11,000-mile-long, single-celled creature, not unlike an amoeba, with a zone of energy around it, a zone of darkness, has entered our galaxy and is consuming star systems. It feeds off the energy given off by living beings and also other energies. Now, that, aside from everything else about Star Trek, like the Enterprise and warp drive and transporters and all the idea that you're in the 23rd century, the ask of that episode is that there is this kind of creature that exists. Now, for me, I find that intriguing, that there is this kind of thing that exists in the cosmos, because the cosmos is unknowable. So in my mind, I'm like, I'll buy into that. And once you buy into that idea, then it's, okay, let's run this down. So what has happened in this episode? So Vulcans, the most logical of people, have come across this thing, the all-Vulcan Starship Intrepid, which is a sister ship of the Enterprise, a Federation heavy cruiser, has come across this entity, this thing. And the Vulcans are trying to figure it out, like, where did this thing come from? What is this? And as they're doing this, they're being drained of their life energies. And what Spock says, what happens to them is, as they were dying, they were just astonished. They were astonished by this, like something like this could exist. So they've already, that even the Vulcans couldn't hack it against this thing. And so the threat is very, 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 very credible. If Vulcans couldn't handle it, what chance do we have? They're smarter than us, right? So when you watch this thing and see how it plays out, there's a lot of different elements. You start thinking like, okay, well, if this thing is draining your life energy, if that's what it does, and it can actually dissolve planets, whatever it's doing, as we get closer to it, what happens to our life energy? Well, they play with all of that. You get to see what the ramifications are. You see what's happening to the crew. Everyone's growing more and more fatigued as they're getting closer to this thing. They are dying. So it has this interesting, intriguing premise that it runs down to the end and makes you believe in it. Like, you believe, man. And so I think that is the single most important thing. And so to answer your question, it's an intriguing story that taps into my sense of wonder about humanity and the cosmos and the infinitude of the universe that we live in. That's what a Star Trek episode has to do. Two things. It taps into my sense of wonder, and it also taps into my love or respect or hope for humanity's future, and that there are groups of people like the characters on the Enterprise that are all the best at what they do. They're the best of the best. They represent humanity at its finest. And that's what I want from a great Star Trek episode. And I want it to tell me a compelling story that both bolsters my belief in the awe and wonder of the universe, but at the same time reaffirms my belief in humanity and our ability to confront crises and our ability to be better as a race of sentient beings. So that's where my love of Star Trek comes from, and that's what I'm looking for from a story. And if you look at episodes like City on the Edge of Forever, with the real Guardian of Forever, not Captain Brass that's ambulatory and can pack up pack up your time portal and go around the galaxy. Woohoo! No. But in City on the Edge of Forever, Dr. McCoy jumps back through time, does something that destroys the future. Now, what I find interesting about, and our characters, Kirk and Spock, without missing a beat, because they're that courageous, they go back in time on perhaps a futile effort to find McCoy and restore the timeline. But the idea of also that story, what I love about City on the Edge of Forever is not just the dilemma they find themselves in, allowing Edith Keeler to die, but the idea that one person could be a fulcrum of history, and they don't even know it. You don't even know. Like, you yourself, and what that story says to you is that every single person could be important. Like, you don't know that maybe you might have a child. You might not do something extraordinary in your life, but your child or your child's 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 child will be the first person to go faster than the speed of light. And that there's all of our lives, we don't even know they could amount to being something amazing. So those are why I love Star Trek episodes. Stubble says, I listened to the last Treksperts episode and missed about 1/3 of the references you guys had on this list. I was surprised that none of you brought up a V episode. Can you say if that comes up anywhere on the rest of the list? Nope. Won't say it. You'll have to listen. Ricky Burnett, nice last name, sends in a tip and says, one of two. Being able to suspend disbelief is something extremely important to me. Some shows, others I hate, like for the entertainment value, relieving the insufferable news in the real world. Mr. Burnett is a huge fan of The Walking Dead, but I can't get past the what I know of human anatomy and biology matter. How hard can I not suspend disbelief in bodies being able to do what they do in The Walking Dead? But in World War Z, I really got into. So suspending disbelief, Kurtzman is a wonderful writer. Ricky, can't go with you there. I don't believe that zombies could run, because that would presuppose they would know the difference between running and walking. Like they would have to be like, I've got to run after this thing. Like that would, I guess, be instinctual. But then why would they ever stop? But if you want to be able to suspend disbelief, if that helps you, I think it's good. But I think the idea of zombies, in fact, there's a really great when you're watching a zombie show, whether it's Dawn of the Dead or The Walking Dead or whatever. The big ask for the entire zombie genre is, do you believe a reanimated corpse can come to life? I guess that's a double negative. I mean, can you believe that a human being, a dead human being, will come back to life? Do you believe that? That's your ask. And I would say that, okay, that's not too much of something to ask for. But now here's the thing. There are rules. And the question that I have is, of course, zombies that want to feed on human flesh, they don't necessarily need human flesh to go on, to continue to stay ambulatory. It's just instinctual. They need to eat. But because zombies are dead, now let's get into it a little. So eventually, zombies would either, they would burst because it's not like their digestive system works. There's no defecation involved. They don't eat human meat and then, have a nice constitutional or whatever. So how does that work? And also, if they're already dead and they're rotting away, wouldn't eventually they would just rot to the point where their legs were no longer able to carry aloft their torsos and stuff? There's a lot you have to get into when it comes to zombies. And so, like, one of the questions that I have in, like, The Walking Dead is, this has been going on for years now. How are there still mass quantities of Walking Dead? Why haven't they all rotted away to the point where they can no longer? And it's strange to me. It's an odd thing they've never dealt with. The fact that, what? So the degradation of the systems, like, wouldn't eventually maggots just eat away at the? I mean, you have to ask yourself, and I think that's a problem. Anyway, when it comes to zombies, I mean, I love zombies, but to me, a zombie film A zombie movie, a zombie story represents the downfall of human society. It represents chaos. It represents the lack of order in humanity. And so a zombie story is never really about zombies. It's about something else. It's about how do we continue on in the wake of this thing. Rojo Diablo movies are very much a modern update of the Roger Moore Bond films. That's pretty true. They feel similar in style and contain lots of references to Roger's Bonds. I'd love to know how you think they compare to Craig's Bond films, which are serious. Yeah, Daniel Craig's Bond movies are relentlessly set in our world, which is why I had a real problem with Silva being so, when he came to London, him and his operatives were way ahead of everyone else, and they had planned for all of these things. I mean, how did they do that? That was one of the reasons I didn't like Skyfall very much, and I know it's crazy to say this, but I'm like, I didn't believe Silva could pull off half the shit he was pulling off in that movie. I didn't buy it, and that was problematic for me. So I think the Kingsman movies hold up better as a job of setting up their own reality and working within their own paradigm, which is why they're fun. But they are clearly an homage to the era of Roger Moore Bonds, I think so. Jeff Yerke, the Yerk Man, is here. Hi, Rob. My pal Frank and I were bitching and moaning today, and we decided that all the shite in franchise world stems from younger people wanting to put their imprint onto what came before. That's it. Live long and prosper, Mr. and Mrs. Yerkman. I agree. And I think one of my big problems, and it's not, you know what? It's not, well, these kids today. I honestly think that there are classical writing styles. There are rules for drama. Go all the way back to Aristotle and Poetics. Go all the way back there, right? First of all, let me make sure I got that correctly. Yeah, Aristotle's Poetics. You have to get it all stems from there, and I think that a lot of what we see, I call it cutscene storytelling. I think, look, we've had cutscenes in video games now for quite some time, and I think a lot of people, the dramatists of today, grew up playing. When you're writing a story, you're dealing with a classical structure that works, that goes back thousands of years. And you still, I think people think, well, we don't need to, when I see science fiction television writing the way it is in Discovery, well, we don't need to explain that. It's Star Trek. But the thing is, in Star Trek, you need to explain it even more. And that's what people don't get. And that's what I have a problem with. And I think you might be right. I'm not slagging off on young people, but I have to say that I think that there's a lot of, like, young people today are growing up and they're shocked by a lot of that people aren't going back and watching classic cinema and seeing how, because to me, if you go back and you watch older movies, they're much more literary in their design because they couldn't move the cameras around like they could move today. They didn't know that editorial style could be fast and furious the way it is today. There was no MTV. So going back and watching movies that were written by great playwrights like Paddy Chayefsky, going back and hearing those words, or going back and getting caught up in character pieces like All About Eve or Sunset Boulevard, I think people are doing themselves a disservice because they have less and less things to rely on. And also, but what's interesting is here in the Wikipedia, Aristotle's Poetics is the earliest surviving work of dramatic theory and the first extant philosophical treatise to focus on literary theory. In this text, Aristotle offers an account which refers to poetry, or more literally, the poetic art derived from play, lyric poetry, and epic poetry. The genres all share the same function of mimesis, or imitation of life, but differ in three ways that Aristotle describes: differences in music, rhythm, harmony, meter, and melody, differences of goodness in the characters, difference in how the narrative is presented, telling a story, or acting it out. The Poetics is primarily tradition. Almost every detail about this seminal work has aroused divergent opinions. Among scholarly debates on the Poetics, the three most prominent have concerned the meanings of catharsis and hamartia. I don't even know that word. I got to look that up. These being the best known. And the question why Aristotle appears to contradict himself between chapters 13 and 14. Well, let me look that up. The hamartia derives from the Greek, and it means to miss the mark or to err. It is most often associated with Greek tragedy. There you go. I don't know why I've never heard hamartia. I guess it's hamartia. That's the word. Interesting. But yeah, I feel that's what I think. That's what I think about Stubble McShaves more. If there's a fantastical element that's part of the world and gives it a sense of wonder without affecting the story, we don't need to know. I 100% agree with you. The Mad Titan Claudius is here. Our man Claudius is here. The Infinity Stone versus the Dream Stone. I believe the bearer of an Infinity Stone must visualize and intend. I imagine that Thanos must visualize eliminating half of the universe's sentient life, like Anya Taylor-Joy imagines chess moves in The Queen's Gambit. Totally agree with you. I totally agree with you because you are wielding the power of thought through. So you have to imagine what it is that you're doing, and that's something that's very specific to what Thanos is wanting to do. I totally agree. Johnny Long sends in a super chat and says, James Gunn's Suicide Squad is going to rule. As fans, we are going to be pissed when James Gunn can't make Suicide Squad and Guardians fast enough for us. Ha ha. I think so. I think so too. I just still want a privical. I just want a privical. I just still want a privical. Sent in 2 super chats. Well, thank you. I just want a privical. Mad Titan Claudius goes on to say, Wonder Woman's 1984 Dreamstone might also use the Wishmaker's visualization as a model for wish fulfillment. But I also have problems with wish-making magic in stories. I would have preferred a power like the One Ring, which just influences the world. Well, I agree with you. And see, the problem, here's my biggest problem. Any story that deals with wish fulfillment, trying to get something that you haven't earned or whatever, always, as a literary device, leads somewhere bad. You know, the point, and they even flat out say it in The Monkey's Paw. You know, if you haven't read Stephen King's Pet Sematary, you have a grieving parent who takes their dead child to the pet cemetery that resurrects dead pets. This is bad. It's not good. So I don't know what to say, but yeah, I agree with you. And again, it's all part of how the stories are told. Anonymous says you should get that chronic cough checked out when you're allowed to leave the house again. Well, I don't really have a chronic cough. I mean, I don't. It's mostly it's dusty in here, so sometimes I do cough, but I do cough during the summer. I do get I have allergies, but I do cough in the summer when the air gets bad here. I do cough when there's a lot of particulate matter in the air. But I do need to go to the doctors anyway. Yes, we're getting a family COVID test again on Tuesday. I'm oh so excited. Well, listen, ladies and gentlemen, kind souls, gentle beings, however you identify across these 28 known galaxies, I think I've brought this show to an end. I'm bringing an end to Robservations, episode number 586. My God, it's full of stars. I want to thank you all for being here. I want to thank you all for supporting the channel. There were a lot of people here today. There was a lot of people here yesterday. I want to thank you all for being here. I want to thank everybody who joins up as a member of the channel to thank you for that. And again, we've got the film festival going. There will be more films dropping. I keep saying that, but there will be more films dropping this week and even today, I think. And tonight we are going to do a whining about movies about Wonder Woman 84. So woohoo! So there you go. But I want to thank you for another great show and for supporting the channel, sending letters. If you want to send a letter to me or Let's Get Physical Media or are fully articulated or whining about movies, you can at the Burnettwork.net website. And if you go to the top right of the page, there's all kinds of places, and you can see where you can send us letters. And I get a lot, but I like to read them, obviously. So please, part of the show is to participate. Anyway, I want to thank you all for being here. And yeah, that's about it. I want to thank my moderating staff. I want to thank The Richard. I want to thank Mike Bodden. Mr. Derringer is here. Joshua Levesque is here. Let's see who else is here. I don't know. I want to thank you guys for being the moderators that you are. I think we have the best community on YouTube, but I'll leave that for you to make the final judgment. But so thank you to them, and thank you to all the people that support the channel. I very much appreciate it. I will be back tomorrow. I will also be on the John Campea show tomorrow and Tuesday, and then I believe we are off for the rest. Oh, and remember, we are going to have a Zoom party on New Year's Eve, it might start at 7, but it's going to start at least 8 o'clock Pacific time, and we will stay, and we will be celebrating the new year on the East Coast. And then as the wave of the new year reaches across America, we will celebrate on the hour, every hour, for at least 4 hours. So that should be fun. And beyond. I mean, I probably should stay up until Hawaii celebrates, but I don't think I could do that. But anyway, more details forthcoming. That will be on Thursday. We've had Zoom parties in the past, and they're a blast. So I look forward to that. And remember, every person you meet has a story to tell that you have yet to hear. And all you have to do is listen. And with that, I say to all of you, have a better day. And I mean that. I do mean that. Mm-hmm.